Welcome back to Gold Derby. I'm Christopher Rosen. I'm so pleased to be joined by Micha Liberman, a past Emmy Award winner and a two-time nominee this year in the sound categories for Only Murders in the Building and Avatar: The Last Airbender. Congratulations on these nominations. That is an incredible.
Thank you.
It's really
Yeah,
great.
unbelievable to get double nom. I didn't. It's doesn't seem real.
What was it like? I guess, yeah. Like, how was that? Had you like when you found out you got one, you had to be like, oh my god, that's so great. And then to get the second, was it like, oh, like how did you find out? I guess.
Well, I woke up in the morning and I logged on to the website and I was like going through one category at a time slowly. I didn't like jump right to mine. Like I wanted to see what our shows got nominated for. And then my phone starts ding, 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 ding. And I'm like trying not to look at it, trying not to look at it. And then Matthew Waters, who is the mixer and sound supervisor on Only Murders in the Building, who himself has, I don't know, 12 Emmy nominations or whatever. Matthew calls me and I was like, don't speak yet. I'm going through them. I'll get there. I already know what you're going to say, but don't say anything until I see it on screen. And then I saw the Avatar one first, and I was like, "Whoa, Matthew didn't call me about the Avatar one." So it's unbelievable.
It's
Two at
so
once.
great.
One is incredible, but two at once doesn't make sense to me.
I can't imagine you probably expect like it sounds like you wouldn't have expected to, but I mean like how do you feel like I guess like how does it feel? I'm sure it feels rewarding, but do you feel like this is such great work, or you I guess are you happy that it's for these two shows at this time in your career, let's say?
So as you said, I have one Emmy already. I actually have two nominations. I my first Emmy I won 20 something years ago for the pilot for Deadwood,
Hmm?
and then I was nominated, 15, 20 years later when we did the Deadwood movie.
Yes.
And I have had such a diverse career working, in every genre across film, TV, comedy, dramas. The fact that both of my nominations were for one franchise, if someone spent 17 years working on the same television show and had five nominations from that television show, that would make sense. It would represent their franchise, it would be a
Mhm.
fair, accurate representation of their career. But it always felt a little misrepresentative of me to have two decades apart from the same franchise. So now that I have Only Murders nomination, which is for a comedy, half-hour comedy, completely different, and then Avatar: The Last Airbender, which is a sci-fi epic, big dramatic piece. I feel like now at least my nominations are more in line with, they're more representative of what my career's been like. I know that is kind of a crazy thing to think like, oh, my Emmy nominations should represent my career, but now they do. So
I mean, I think that's very fair, right? Like, especially because, like you said, you've done so many different things, and it does feel like maybe more, like you said, more representative of that now with these two shows and these two honors. I guess just to start for Only Murders, incredible third season. The show did really well overall with the Emmys this year, and it obviously built around a musical on Broadway. I guess, like, just in terms of that overall, like, how how exciting was that challenge to go into the third season and doing like creating a musical like for the show, I guess. Like
I think that was one of the most difficult things I've ever done in my entire career because it wasn't actually a musical. It was in a real musical, like the music starts, the background sounds disappear, the production, professionally recorded music comes up, people start dancing and singing and lip syncing, and nobody in the audience expects that to be real. But this isn't actually a musical. This is a show about people putting on a musical. So when they're on stage, you have to honestly 100% believe that you're watching an actor sing on stage. And you are sometimes, but like there's I don't know how much behind the curtains I should go here, but like, for example, there's a line, one of the lines where the first two words are from the production, from the actor singing on stage when they were recording. The next two words are from pre-production. We, pre-recorded the song so that they could, sing along. The next two words are from post-production. We brought that actor back in to record those just two words that we couldn't find good versions of in production and in pre-production. And then we go back to production for the last word. That's one line. And the entire show is like that. And, one of the nominations we got is for that incredible patter song, Pickwick Triplets. And
yes.
every single syllable that Steve Martin sang had to match his lips perfectly. And they edited that together from multiple takes. And, God, thank God he's such a talented musician. And not just him, we had this luck of like everyone in this cast happens to also be professional level
Yeah.
musicians. which made my job, it wouldn't have been possible otherwise, you know. And uh, it was a lot of that T has to hit his teeth exactly. That M, right when he closes his lips, that every syllable in that entire patter song, which of course he's on camera for the whole thing, had to be placed, and that's every song across the whole season. And it was a challenge, but I'm very proud of how it came out.
It's absolutely great. I rewatched it. So Sid's Probe is the episode that you're recognized for, and that's like when we get to see the patter song fully in the him on stage doing it in the rehearsal, and it's just incredible. It's like an incredible performance, and like you're saying there, it's totally seamless. Like as a viewer, you're just like you're not thinking like you were saying there, like mixing and matching or whatever. It's like it just seems like it's one thing or maybe two things. Like it doesn't sound like at all like different. It's like totally perfect, I guess, for lack of better words.
That's
But I guess
also
like
that's also a testament to Lindsay Alvarez, our mixer. What a genius she was at matching everything. So it just, like you said, seamless and perfect.
so with that one especially, like I guess in that episode too, there's so like there are so many performances. I guess like was that like how long does something like that take for you? Like to do like just that aspect of the episode, the Pickwick triplets.
That song probably took me a week,
Wow, just for that song.
probably.
That is how do you keep up? Like I guess for you, is it hard to keep as a music editor? Then is it hard for you to like how do you not like how do you keep the not necessarily the focus, but like how do you not like lose like what you're trying to do during? You understand what I'm saying? Like it's like doing that over and over and over again, like and still and getting it to be such at a high level. How do you kind
And
of keep that energy up for yourself?
and in order to get that level, you have to be so deep in the minutia and then back out and listen and go like, does this still sound like music? Like how much have I messed it up? Like and the last thing I want to do is change one of their performances. Like, with other actors, you're like, how do I help this guy with his performance? How do I help? But like, there's nothing I can do to improve Steve Martin or Martin Short or Meryl Streep or Selena Gomez. Like, I'm just trying to get their best work out to the audience without, like you said, without like losing the big picture of like what we're trying to accomplish here. And, I think this actually goes deep into what I think makes Hollywood great, which is if you watch Only Murders and you pay attention to like the buttons on someone's jacket, somebody thought about making those the right buttons, and somebody thought about every single object in the background and every light and there's a person, a professional, and on Only Murders and Avatar in particular, the best professionals I've ever met in every department, trying to make sure that their minutia is perfect. And when you add all of that together, you get this rich, realistic reality. And it's all about making sure that at the tiniest level, it feels true and real and honest. And that's, as a music editor, I'm often removed from that because I'm putting an underscore. Like, I'm not putting something that's supposed to be really happening on camera. Like, I get to be a little freer with how we're, expressing ourselves on the music side. But on this show and in this episode in particular, like, the minutia was, vital to, like you said, just making it feel like you're watching a performance and not knocking the audience out of the action.
And I also want to talk about too about speaking of performance. Like obviously, it's like Meryl Streep. What can you say about Meryl Streep being an incredible actor? But like, and as obviously an Emmy nominee for the show as well. But the performance at the end with the For the Sake of the Child is so great because she's acting in the song, but also singing the song. I just found all of that like it's such a wonderful performance. But I also was like the song, like the way it's balancing the song with like her singing the song, but also like saying like it just is a great thing. And I was like, how did you kind of pull that off and like in your as your part of it? Like how do you make that sound like work so well?
Well, a big part of it, and this is like something I have to give a lot of credit to our music team in New York. We have Sid Khosla, our composer here, who does the underscore, but for season 3 we had a separate music team in New York led by Pasek and Paul, the songwriters, and they brought on their whole music team for recording and producing the songs, and there was a lot of back and forth between me and New York in terms of getting exactly the right performances for exactly the right scenes so that we could do what you're saying, which is like maintain the musical integrity, but also make sure that the actors are getting their performances out in a way that, when she opens her mouth, the energy coming out of her mouth has to match the energy we see in her body. A lot of times you'll see people will do lip sync, they'll get the lips right, but the notes, that's way too big of a note for what that actor is doing with their face or with their body. And we had to be super sensitive to that because, you know, everything that these actors, everything Meryl Streep does with her face and with her body is intentional. And, like I can't erase any of that. So it was a real challenge on that show, real challenge. And I'm really proud that that work was recognized by the Academy because it really was something particularly special and difficult. So.
It's incredible to watch, and like I said, like just rewatching it here before we spoke, like that episode and just the whole season was really great. But that it's like it is really an incredible achievement. Like you're saying, and so is Avatar: The Last Airbender. I was like, I mean, that show is like like you're saying, like a massive epic sci-fi show. There's so many elements going on. I guess like just overall, like for you, what was the biggest challenge to that series and like your role?
So that was sort of the opposite challenge, which is there was very little music that was, in the scene. Like we did have one scene in one episode where there were some live musicians and that was pretty fun. But in general, that was like your sort of like classic underscore, like, really big epic music. We went to Vienna to record an orchestra there, 80-piece orchestra, and I think it was a 50-piece choir, and like Netflix really was super behind that show and spared no expense. And we had this composer Takeshi Furukawa that I'd never met before, who basically came from the video game world, and he's a very big video game composer. And I didn't know him, I didn't know his work, and he showed up and like, oh my God, I was just like blown away. He is. He's the guy who like you get in his car and he's listening to John Williams. Like film score is his life, and he's like the real deal. A lot of film composers come from a lot of different. They get there a lot of different ways. Like a lot of them were pop musicians who came over, or they're players who use their skills in their instrument. But Takeshi's like the real honest to goodness, old school, well-trained composer, writing for orchestra the way you're supposed to write for orchestra, using the instruments the way a classical musician would use them, with a real deep understanding of the genre. And watching him work was astonishing. And the music that he wrote was incredible. And that show set a record for me in my career. It was the only show that I ever got picture from the picture department for the same episode of television in 3 different calendar years. We started on the pilot in 2022 and we finished in 2024. And I watched that show go from really good to great. And a year of working on, after they had wrapped production, a year of watching that show come together and go from temp visual effects and temp music and temp this and temp that to all the final visual effects and the final music. And what's funny is that those are the 2 categories where Avatar was recognized, was the sound editing and the visual effects editing, because the final products on there are so far from production, so well crafted, and the time and same kind of level of detail to like every hair on Appa's head and every horn note in the orchestra and every detail really paid attention to. One of the things that I really loved about recording that score was watching Takeshi give notes to the orchestra, because his notes were almost all dynamics. Like, I need a little bit more second violins there and a little less trombones, like really focusing on the minutia and the details. And it did exactly the same thing we were talking about before in Only Murders. It created this rich world that like really like draws you into this alternate reality. And that was really like an amazing thing to be a part of. Amazing to watch that show grow and become what it became. So
I totally agree. All the elements of the show are amazing, and like even stuff that wasn't like the product, all the stuff, even the stuff that wasn't necessarily recognized. I was like, this is all like really well done, and like the costumes, and the production design, all
the
this
casting, the acting, the writing. It's like you rarely get to do shows where like by the time it gets to air, you're like, I don't see a weakness.
Right.
But like Avatar was definitely one of those shows where like by the time it got to air, I was like, I don't know what we could improve. Like we took the time to improve everything,
In terms of the score, like you're saying, and like so when he's like pulling the levers on those, on like you're saying, like the dynamics or whatever, how does that help you or in your aspect of working with the music?
So we did, I could pull up the number, I think it was 2,500 takes on that show. So total number of times we pressed record with the orchestra. It was, thousands of times. And each one of those takes then has to be picked through and go like, okay, this section of this take was good, and then this section of this take was good, and then we're going to go back for the horn solo to the first take, and then we'll end with the third take of this cue, and then we'll use this take from the choir and this take from the, and all of that has to be glued together to make the final best version of the score. And a lot of that is for lack of a better word, digital trickery. A lot of that is like saying, well, now that we've recut the picture, this part doesn't fit anymore. So let's use these two bars from this cue to get us from this part to this cue so that we can stay in the action. And because there were so many versions of that picture and it was constantly being improved after it had, locked, after they were done with the edit, it was still constantly improving. By the time we got to the final locked picture, the music had been written to a version of that show that was long gone. And so I had to, that's one of my big jobs as a music editor, is to take the music that was written to a different version of this scene and still make it hit everything the way it needs to and still tell the story in the moments it needs to without compromising any of the musical integrity. And that was really, for me, the biggest challenge on Avatar, because the picture was constantly being improved and constantly updating. And so, okay, we took 5 frames out of that shot. Oh, well, now when Aang shoots that thing, it doesn't line up with the music anymore. So we got to figure out how to get 5 frames out of the music somewhere with it still sounding like music.
And again, it's incredible. I love hearing this because, again, I just watched the show and just rewatched the finale here, which I know which is what the nomination is for. And I was like, just hearing you say this and having just watched it, I'm like, it's totally, you would never know any of this stuff. Like, it's totally seamless. As a viewer, you're just like, the music sounds great. Like, it's all working really well with the sound and the visual effects and everything put together.
I mean, I'm sure, as you can imagine, that battle scene at the end didn't look anything like that when they first shot it. There was no monster. And so Takeshi was scoring to picture where, like, and it says in the screen, and then the monster will do this, and then the monster will do that. And like, what does he actually do? What does it actually look like? When does he open his mouth and roar? Okay, well, it's actually a beat later than we had anticipated. So now I have to figure all that stuff out.
Right.
That was really...
It's incredible. It's incredible. Are you involved? Are you going to be involved in seasons 2 and 3 of Avatar, or not? You don't know yet.
As far as I know, I am. No deals have been signed yet, but as far as I understand, I am.
That's so great. Were you a fan of that show, or what was your awareness level just in general of Avatar: Last Airbender before you got this gig?
So the very first meeting I had, a Zoom meeting with the show creator, Albert, who created this whole thing. We were talking about a particular cue for Sokka. A particular scene for Sokka in the pilot. And he says to me, look, I don't know how much you know about the original cartoon, but then he said something about Sokka's character. And I said, well, I only know as much of someone who's binged the series twice. And he was the entire series twice. He was like, oh, okay, then we can have a real conversation. I've never been on a show where everyone was a super fan. Everyone.
That's so cool.
The post-producer, Chris Zampis, his dog's name is Zuko. And his dog was named Zuko before he was hired on the show.
Wow.
One of the assistant editors plays in a Paixão League. Paixão is a fictional game that was invented in Avatar. One of our assistant editors plays in a Paixão League because the number of people who have characters from that show tattooed on their body before they were hired, it was, I think, part of the reason why it was such a success, as opposed to other attempts, which we won't mention, to bring this franchise to life, particularly that bad feature film, is because it was made by super fans. Like the fear of is this going to offend the fans? Are the fans going to like this? We just had to say, does it offend me? Do I like it? Because we were all super fans of the franchise before we were hired.
Right.
And in fact, one of the way I got Avatar was originally, there's another music editor, Tom Trafalski, who works at my company, also multi-Emmy nominee, who was originally offered the show, but he was very busy. And he called me and said, yeah, there's a show they're offering me. I don't know if you're available. It's Avatar, but not the blue Avatar. It's some other Avatar, the Last Airbender or something. And so I go, okay, let me explain to you how it works. There's 4 nations. And I start he's like, whatever, just apply for the job.
Oh my God, that's amazing. And I think what you're saying actually is 100% right in that one of the reasons I think the show was so successful, certainly with the fans as well, is that it was made by people who obviously really liked it. I think that goes a long way to making a good show and a good adaptation of of the anime series and stuff. We have to wrap here. Music editor Micha Liberman, past Emmy winner, like you said, a two-time nominee this year for Only Murders and Avatar: The Last Airbender. Thank you so much for doing this, and again, congratulations
Thank
on these
you.
nominations.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.